Today we're working on a '08 Chevy Uplander. And when it came in, the basic complaint is that the check engine light is on, it's running bad, and it kind of bogs down, and there's black smoke coming out the tailpipe. So as you know, anytime the check engine light is on, the first thing we do is hook up the scanner and read the codes. Now the codes that we had was P0134, oxygen sensor circuit inactive, bank 1, P0171B, bank 1 system lean, and P0300 random misfire, and the last code was a P2A00 O2 sensor range performance problem. So we got 4 codes. 2 of them are oxygen sensor related, 1 is a random misfire, and the 4th one is a lean situation. So what could this be? Obviously what we like to do is kind of think it through first and see what it could be. Oxygen sensor problem and a lean code, that could be related. And the fact that we've got a random misfire, if the engine is running lean, it could develop into be a random rather than a specific misfire. So when we stop to think about these, an oxygen sensor, a random misfire, and a lean situation, it all is kind of making sense that it's pointing towards the oxygen sensor being a problem. So let's check that out. Now it'd be pretty easy here just to kind of jump to conclusions and say let's throw an oxygen sensor in it. But really the smart thing is to do is prove this, find the evidence. So we're going to use a Genesis this time and actually look at the data stream. Now we've got the tool hooked up and the right vehicle selected, and we've got it running. We're going to select engine. Now we've got all of our data parameters showing, and we've kind of pre-selected here long-term, short-term, oxygen sensor 1.1 and oxygen sensor 1.2 at the very top. And then we can watch our data over here. Now we actually like to graph some of these, so I'm going to go up to the oxygen sensor 1.1 and graph it, and then I'm going to go down to the next one and graph it as well. Now we want to look at the oxygen sensor right here, which is this one right here, the oxygen sensor bank 1 sensor 1. Bank 1 sensor 2 is after the catalytic converter, so right now I'm just going to turn that one off. So the only one we're actually going to be graphing is the oxygen sensor bank 1 sensor 1. Right there. Now we can see that it is switching. If you're not familiar with the Genesis, this is the live data, and this lighter portion is kind of like a magnifying glass. It's zoomed in. But we can see that we're switching, but if we look over here at our data, you can see that we're really only switching 0.3. So the negative is 0.02, not the negative, but the low range, and the highest it's doing is 0.37. Now we're going to accelerate it a little bit and see what happens as we rev the engine. Now when we just stepped on the accelerator, we flooded it with fuel momentarily, and the oxygen sensor should have gone up to 0.9 and stayed there, but you can see that it didn't. It just stayed at 0.3. So the oxygen sensor is switching, but it's only switching between 0 and 0.3. For those of you who might need a little refresher on oxygen sensors, the normal oxygen sensor should read between 0 and 1 volt. Most typically, it'll range between like 0.1 and 0.2, all the way up to either 0.8 or 0.9. It should be fluctuating like that. And what ours is reading is fluctuating between like 0.1 and 0.3. So it is switching, but it's switching at the low range, and it is never crossing above half a volt, 0.5. A good oxygen sensor should switch above and below a half a volt many times, just over and over again. Now ours is not. Ours is staying below a half a volt. So we've got some information. Let's make this an interactive video so we can all learn from it. What do you think the problem is? Post your comments and we'll continue with part 2.